All right, how's it going, everyone? So we're back at it with another React challenge. This one, we're going to try to build a multi-select drop-down component where basically, let's just like display all of the states, and the user can select which states they want. And as they select these states, it'll basically tell you how many you have selected. And maybe we can use that information and store it in state somewhere so we can like display it somewhere else. And I'm trying to get away from like calling these like interview challenges because honestly, I don't know what people are going to be asked in an interview. People seem to get mad when I like do these challenges and say interview in it. So this is just a challenge. And I recommend that you try doing it yourself if you're a beginner, because stressing your knowledge and your problem solving with building out these components is a great way to like verify you are learning how to code and React and problem solve. Anyway, let's just try to build this out. I'm going to make a new component. I'll call it like state dropdown. Okay. And let's just go ahead and export a function called state dropdown. And we are going to go ahead and just return a div that says hello for right now. And let's just go ahead and render that out somewhere. I'll say state dropdown like this. Now let's verify. If we go to our app, it says hello. That means we should be good to go. So the first part of this is like we should probably actually have some type of select box. Some type of, now I'm not going to use any of the built-in like HTML stuff. I'm just going to try to do this all by hand and style it by hand. You probably need to make sure you keep in mind accessibility when you're building this type of stuff out, because building out your own custom components like this are usually not going to be accessible for people who have to use like tab and a screen reader. So usually I would recommend using the HTML things that are built in. But again, this is like a good challenge to just stress, like, can you build a dropdown like this? Okay, so first of all, we need like a component that looks like this. It's like an input box or like a div or something that has an arrow on the right. So can we build that out? Let's try that out. I'm also going to just do some normal CSS here. So if I were to just go to components, I'll just say state dropdown.css. Let's just go ahead and import this thing up at the top. I'll say import state dropdown CSS. I'm not using CSS modules. I'm just doing plain CSS. And we'll give this a class name of state dropdown. How about that? And let's make sure we can style this. So state dropdown, and I'm going to go ahead and just give this like a background white and I don't know, maybe some height, 30 pixels and width of 100 pixels. I don't know. There we have it. It's a little bit big. I am zoomed in a little bit, so it's going to look much bigger than like what you think 30 pixels of width would be. I'll do this. And we want to basically, let's just put how many you have selected. Or I could start off with saying like select the state. Select your states. Okay. I'll do something like this. All right. So select your state should be showing up. Now this is, I need to make the color of this be actually like proper. So let's go back to the state dropdown. I'll say color of black. And I do want to make it so this is like centered vertically. We could potentially just give this like a display of flex. And I will say justify content is center. I'm also not sure why my autocomplete with CSS is not working right now. Kind of weird. So it's actually going to be a line item center, not justify content. And then we could probably just add some padding to the left. Again, I'm just like stressing your ability to style stuff yourself. And then we could potentially put a little icon here if you wanted to. It doesn't really matter. Let's just focus on that later. So the idea is when you click on this drop down thing, you should basically have a bunch of options to select your states. And technically, if you wanted to make this more accessible, this should probably be a button so you can actually like select it. Okay, so what I need to do in React is when you click enter or when you actually select this thing, you want to show some panel down here. So how do you do that in React? Well, you should probably have some state, right? So I'm going to go ahead and say like show dropdown, or is dropdown displayed? And I can say set is dropdown displayed, and we will have that be some state that's set to false by default. And what we're going to do is I'm going to wrap this whole thing in like a React fragment. And I'll make sure I auto import use state here. And I'm going to put a panel here. I will just say if is dropdown is displayed, I want to display some type of panel. So I can say div, I can say class name of panel, I guess. And we can just go ahead and put some text here. I'll say like hello. And the idea is when you click on this button or when you select it, we want to toggle the drop down on and off. So inside the button itself, I'm going to say on click, and we're going to go ahead and just toggle this thing, which we can do by saying previous state, and we will just return the negation of the previous Boolean. So what this does is if this thing is set to false, I'm saying set this to the previous Boolean and negate it, right? So if this is false, it becomes true. If this is true, it becomes false. That's how you can do like a toggle behavior. Let's verify this works. If I click on this, hello displays. So the issue with this is like the whole page is shifting whenever we click on this thing. You can also verify that if you can click enter on it. That's good to verify accessibility. I kind of rather this be all lowercase. Anyway, so how do we make it so the drop down is not like shifting the whole page? Well, one thing you could do is you could give this panel and you can give it a display of, I think we could do absolute, but if we do that, it's going to kind of mess up the layout of this whole thing. So what I might do is I might put this in a field set so that I can give the field set some type of like absolute positioning. I'll do this. I'm going to move this state drop down to here. And this might not even need a button right now. You know, I don't know what I want to name this. I guess I could name this a state drop down. And then here I could name this, we don't even have to give it a name, right? We could just do some type of like, something like this. If we know that there's only ever going to be one button inside a state drop down, we could just style it like that. But then inside of state drop down, what I want to do is I want to give this a position of relative. Let me go ahead and verify I didn't break anything. Okay. So we have some weird border going on here. Let's figure this out. I think it's because I'm using a field set, and I should probably get rid of the field set border. So on side of the state dropdown itself, I will say border of none. Make sure that thing goes away. And okay, so again, it's still shifting the page. So how do you fix that? Again, we added position relative to the field set itself. And on the panel, we could say position of absolute, and that'll make it so it does not shift the page and it shows up underneath it. Now what we could also do is we can give this a background of, let's say, white for right now, and I'll just give it like a padding of 10 pixels. We should probably also make the text of it. I'll say like color is black. Okay. There we have it. So we got a little panel here. Now the panel should probably be like a certain size. If you look at this, it's almost the same size as the select itself. And we could potentially give this like a width of 100%. See if this works. And that should make it be the same size as the field set, I believe. Or close enough or something. That look okay? Anyway, let's just go ahead and see, can we fetch this information from an API, or can we like get a hard-coded list of all the states that exist in the United States? So first of all, let's see if there's an API of United States. You know, I'm going to say JSON list of all United States. Let's do that. And let's see if there's a nice JSON format of this. Looks like we have this. We also have this state title case. Maybe we could just grab this thing and copy it in. Now I'm actually going to put this in a, I don't want to put it in this file because it's going to be huge. So I'm going to put it in another file called like states.tsx. Technically I could make this like lowercase since it's not like a proper React component. I'll say export states is equal to that data. Export const states. And now we can import it from the other component and we can start using it. So let's in the panel itself, we're going to say states. Make sure you auto import that from that states file we just created. I'm going to map over every single state, and we want to render out probably a select, like a checkbox. So I think the way you do that is you say input type is equal to checkbox, and we should probably also give it a label. So I'm going to go ahead and just like put this in a fragment real quick, save that, and I'll put a label here. And we will say this could be the actual state name. So I'll say the name right here. Let's make sure this works. If I look at the panel now in our application, we get a bunch of different states that we can select. Now again, accessibility is important. So let's make sure that if you were to click on the label itself, it'll select the state. So on the label, I'm going to say HTML4, and then I'm going to say, I need to put an ID on the input, right? So on the input itself, I'll say ID. And we can actually interpolate something here. So I will just go ahead and say like input and then state dot abbreviation maybe. Okay, and then we'll just make sure that these things are matching like so. And then to verify this, if you click on Connecticut or Delaware, like it should be toggling the states properly. Cool. Now I think the states here, like the text is pretty large, right? So let's reduce the text. And also on the panel, I think they have like 1, 2, 3 columns here. And when you select it, it changes the background color to like a light blue. Maybe we can kind of do that as well. So on the panel CSS, we will just say display of grid, and then I'll say grid template columns is repeat. I think it's 3, 1FR. There we go. So now we got 3 columns. I do not know why some of these are so huge. Kind of weird. Let's go over here and just try to figure out what's going on. I think first of all, let's just make the text a little bit smaller. So I'll say like text font size 12 pixels. Did that help at all? And then on the actual checkbox, I might have to wrap this in like another type of field set or form group. So I'm just going to add another field set here. And for every field set inside the panel, I'm going to go ahead and just say display a flex so that it pushes these things properly next to each other. And then I will say width of 100%. Actually, I need to figure out why it's like going off the page here. It's kind of weird. And then also, I'm going to say line items center. There we go. And then what else should we do? We probably don't want any border on this. So we'll say border of none. Looks pretty good. Actually, I mean, it looks bad. It's like that stuff's going off the page. So we got to figure out why that is the case. Now, I think the case is that I gave this panel a width of 100%, and really we want it to expand to be more than that. So I'm not going to give that 100% anymore. Now we got all the states popping up here. But still, like I want it to display more, so I might make the text a little bit smaller again. I'm going to say font size of 10 pixels. Probably not the best. If I were to zoom out, yeah, this is super small. So I'll go back to 12 pixels, maybe even 14. And for now, I'm not going to zoom in on this application because you want it to look like pretty decent. But what we could do is we could put a scroll bar inside of this panel so that it doesn't like have to scroll all the way down. So I could go ahead and say overflow Y is auto, and that should hopefully add a scroll bar. But unless you add a fixed height to this thing, like it's not going to put a scroll bar. So let's do a height of 200, and now you can actually scroll through all these states, right? Maybe 300 or 260 might be a better thing. Can I move this thing up? Why is this page? Let me go to the app.css, and I want to make sure that I'm going to get rid of that center here. All right, there. Let me just do this. I'm just changing the app CSS a little bit so it's like not right in the center of the screen. Cool. So Federation States of Micronesia. Wow. I haven't heard that one before. That's how ignorant I am. Let's go ahead and try to make it so when you select these states, it highlights the whole thing in like a light blue, like we saw before. So inside of the state dropdown, how would we do that? Well, we want to make sure that when you check the input, we want to add like a dynamic class to this whole field set probably. So how do you, first of all, we need to link this to state, right? How do you know what things you have checked or not? So we should probably make some type of like map or something so we can keep track of which things we have enabled. So I could potentially say like selected states and set selected states is equal to use state. And I'll just say empty object for right now. And I'm going to use that as a map. And then what I could potentially do is as you check these different states, I think I could say like on change, what I could do is as you select these, I could just say set selected states. And then we could just keep track of like the actual, I don't know, abbreviation, I guess. So we could say state.abbreviation, and then we could say equal to, actually, I think I can go E, and I can say E dot is checked. I forgot how to do this. Is like target dot checked. I think that's how you do it. Sometimes in code, you just forget how stuff works. So it's either going to be true or false. So let's verify this works. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, well, actually, what I also need to do is I need to put checked here, and I need to also map that to the selected states, and then I'll say state.abbreviation. Now, the issue is that a lot of these states are like, this is an empty object to begin with. And it probably make more sense to have this default to like an actual map that had a bunch of values already defined. So if we use those states, we could potentially do some type of reduce and get all the abbreviations set up to false. So what I'm gonna do is inside this default state, I'm gonna say states.reduce, and I'm gonna say object, and I'm gonna say state, and we are gonna basically return object state.abbreviation, and we're gonna set everything to false by default. Okay, so if you don't know how reduce works, basically it's a way to loop over all of your elements in an array, and you can do some type of logic. Usually it's for like aggregating things together, but you can also build up new objects using the like every value. So this is an example that you might see in a lot where you like basically need to build up a new object using all of the values of abbreviation to basically set up a map that's equal to false. Okay, I don't know if you guys understood that. I'm going to print it out though. Let's just go ahead and print out selected states, so you guys know what I'm talking about. Now, if I go down here and click this, notice that we have all the states already set to false. And now we won't have like issues potentially with the UI having a bunch of like undefined values. I'm getting issues with key. I think I need to put a key. Anywhere in React you do a dot map, you need to make sure that your stuff has a key. I'm just going to key off of abbreviation. And I think that should be good. Now, what is this complaining about? So this is complaining about because the selected states is potentially undefined here. I don't know the best TypeScript fix for this. I think I might have to set this like a record that's a string and a string. Maybe that'll fix the issue. Probably not. Oh, this needs to be a string and a Boolean. Okay, so sometimes you got to do this in TypeScript where you actually need to type things as records. And I'm going to say this is a record that holds a string, and that string maps to a value of a Boolean. Okay. All right, so this code's getting a little bit complex. Let's see how much more we can do. So now as you're checking these things and unchecking them, I want to make sure this works. So I'm going to refresh the page. I'm also going to load up my React Dev Tools real quick. And I'm going to go ahead and just click on the state dropdown and look at this state map here. And I want to make sure if I were to select like Arkansas or Alabama or Alaska, does this actually update my state? And it looks like it completely breaks. So let's go ahead and go back to the code and figure out what are we doing wrong. I think what we're doing wrong is we need to also spread the selected states here. So to keep track of the old state. Now I'm going to refresh the page. I'm going to click Alabama, Alaska, Arkansas, and those should all become true in our little state map here. Okay, that looks pretty good. Not sure how long my camera had low battery indicator, but hey, whatever. So now we want to basically say if this thing is checked, we want to add a class to the field set. So how do you do that in React? Let's see if I can remember. I'm going to say class name, and we want to dynamically add a class if this thing is checked. So I'm going to go ahead and say like, I'll say selected. And I think what we can actually do is I'm going to say selected states state.abbreviation. If this thing is true, I'm going to add the selected class of this. Let's see if this thing will work. We might need to do a ternary here. So if this thing is selected, otherwise we'll do nothing. And then we can style this a little bit. So if I go to the field set of the panel, we can say panel field set dot selected, and we're gonna say background of like a light blue. I'll just say blue, and then I should hopefully, okay. I'll do red, green, blue. I see red, 0, blue could be, I don't know how to do a light blue, honestly. Okay, so that's pretty awful in terms of accessibility. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna this is what I like to do. I like to load up the DevTools, and I like to just get the color picker out. There's probably other ways to do this. I'm just gonna grab that color directly, and that's what we're gonna be using. Cool. So now as we select stuff, it just basically highlights the entire thing. Awesome. We can tab through this. We can check things. Pretty cool. We can tab backwards. That looks like it's all pretty good. We can close it. Now what we want to do is we want to say how many do we select and put that in the text here. Okay, so we could probably use some type of derived value in React. So I'm going to say like number of states checked, or I guess we should keep it consistent and say selected, and that's going to be equal to. Now what we could do again is do a we could probably just do a an object.values. I'm going to pass it the selected states. I'm going to filter on the booleans. So I want the things that are true, and then I'm going to get the length. Is this proper? I don't know. Let's just go ahead and print this out. This should print out how many I have selected. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, so that works perfectly fine. There's probably other ways you can do this, honestly, but that's the fastest way I could think about it. And I'm going to basically do a ternary here. Let's say if this thing is greater than 0, then what we're going to do is we're going to print out a string. That's going to be the number of selected. Otherwise, we are going to print out that. Actually, let me interpolate this. And I think from the design that we're going for, the existing thing, they said 11 selected. Yeah, so we could just go ahead and say the number and then selected. Okay, let's check this out. So now as I select things, there we go. Now I might actually change this to say states selected. I think that's better UX. So now I got all the states selected. Now I'm going to make the drop down a little bit bigger. I don't like the styling of this, honestly. So I'm going to make the height of this that. Font size 18 pixels. Let's see how this looks like. Cool. Now I didn't do the little drop down icon. Honestly, you could just figure that out. Grab like an icon library and have that displayed there. But I think something that would be more interesting to do is like, how do you make this thing collapse if you click outside of the panel? Like after you've opened the panel, if you click outside the panel, like we should probably have this thing collapse. So let's see if I can do this off of memory. Usually I use like the React hooks library that has like a bunch of on click outside, but maybe we can like really stress our React knowledge and add some type of click listener on the document. So I'm going to keep track of this drop down here. So this will be like a panel, and the way to keep track of the actual underlying DOM element is by using a ref. So I'll say like drop down ref is equal to use ref. And I think sometimes you have to pass null for this not to complain in TypeScript. I could be wrong though. But I'm going to pass that ref here like this. So now we have access to this actual DOM element, and we can use logic around if this thing is like clicked on or not clicked on. And again, what we're trying to do is like if you were to click outside the panel, we want to collapse the panel. Now the fastest way I could figure out how to do this, or I could think about doing this, would be use an effect for when this thing mounts, when this component mounts inside of React. We want to set up an event listener to the document. So I'm going to say document.add event listener, and I will say click, and let's just go ahead and call a callback function or when you click on the document. Also, you make sure in your effects you clean up your stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and say like document.remove event listener. And we're going to remove that same listener that we have set up, which I'm going to have to pull out to a function actually. So I'm going to pull that out and I'll say listener. No, I'm going to call it on click. And we're going to pass that here. I'm going to pass that there. Cool. So if I have this correct, hopefully I do, what I can do is when you click anywhere in the document, we want to check like what exactly did the user click on. So I'm going to pass in an E here, and I believe I could say E dot, I could say if E dot target is equal to dropdown ref dot current, then I'm going to go ahead and just, actually, if it's not equal to the dropdown, I'm going to go ahead and just set this to display of false. Now, I don't know what this needs to be. I think it's like click event, react.click event, maybe. I'll just put it any because I don't remember off the top of my head. So I'll just embarrass myself and just show you I don't know. Let's see if this works. If I open up the dropdown, it won't work. And I think the reason this is not working is because I'd have to probably prevent propagation on this itself. Let's actually see. Are we getting here? Let's see if we're getting here. Okay, so we are. Now, what we want to do is you probably want to say, like, if we've clicked on this button, then that's another instance of where we don't want to hide this. Now, I think what we could also potentially do is just like, this might be a little hack I can just add in real quick. I'm going to verify like my knowledge. I'm going to say e.prevent. I think it's called stop propagation. So if you click on the button, like don't propagate the event. I think that's also how you can do it. So now when I click off of the panel, like it collapses, which is probably not good. I don't think I have this right. Yeah, I definitely have that wrong. So let's rethink about what we're doing. You know, at this point, I don't even know if I know what I'm doing. I think I could potentially add a prevent propagation here, or stop propagation. Is that how you do it? I mean, that works. I don't know if that's the proper way to do it. Like stopping the propagation on the panel itself. Because the issue before is like if you were to click on this, the event will bubble up the DOM tree and then it eventually would fire on the document itself. So we want to basically stop the events from going up that tree. And you guys can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments because I know you guys will. But I think this is good enough. I've been going for like 30 minutes. We got the drop down. It looks pretty similar to this. I think it looks pretty good. And we have shown that we can like loop through the selected states, update the drop down. The only thing I'm missing is the icon here. Which, I mean, maybe we could do real quick. Hero icons. Let's see if we can find like a little drop down, or maybe there's like an ASCII for carrots. Here, let's just grab this one. I'm gonna copy the SVG, and on the input itself here, inside the button, let's just paste in the SVG and see if we can get this thing working. Now, for hero icons, this I think uses Tailwind by default or something. So we might actually need to like style this. Here, I'm going to say font size. Actually, I'm going to say width of like 10 pixels, height of 10 pixels, and see what happens. Is that how you scale down the SVG? Okay. Looks like it's working, but I just need to make sure that it's aligned to the right. So how do I align this thing to the right? I think since the button itself, I could potentially give this display a flex. Oh, it already has a flex. So what I could do is I could say justify content space between. And that should push the thing over to the right. So, okay, now you have to like make it toggle to like make it go inward or down based on if you're toggled out or toggled in. Okay, let's just do this real quick. I think it's like this. Let's just copy the SVG, and if it's expanded, it should be down. If it's not, it should be to the right, I believe. Okay. So at this point, I'm just trying to finish up this video real quick because I'm hitting 30 minutes. I'm kind of tired of making this video, to be honest with you all. So let's just make sure that if we have this thing expanded, so I will say is dropdown displayed, then we want to do a ternary. I'll display one SVG. Otherwise, I'll display the other SVG, and then I will do this. Okay. Some people aren't a fan of having like SVGs in their code. Is that proper? I think it's the other way around. I'm going to go ahead and negate that. I think that's what it's supposed to look like. Anyway, so that's it. If you guys like watching this little challenge and you guys had fun trying to do this yourself, leave a comment, press the like button, press the bell icon, and stay tuned if I decide to do any more React challenges in the future. I think this one is pretty cool. And the better you get at CSS and HTML and JavaScript and React and whatnot, the more components and the more things you're going to be able to build without spending too much time trying to figure it out. But like always, I'd probably just use a component library if you actually need to do something like this. But sometimes you got to build your own components depending on your use cases and what your UX team wants. Anyway, that's it. I got a Discord channel that you're welcome to join if you want to talk to me directly or just find a place to hang out with other developers and ask questions. And I have a newsletter in the description of this video that you can go and subscribe to, where I may or may not send you some newsletter tips and tricks about web development in the future. Have a good day and happy coding.